ويعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض والله على كل شيء قدير.
The next condition that ra will be found is the ra Saakinah preceded by mutaharrik. This particular ra, we'll have to apply our mind a bit, and it is a little bit more tricky than the first one. If the ra Saakinah is preceded by a fatha or a dhamma, it will be read with tafkhim. Example, يرجعون يرجعون القمر التكاثر. So in all these examples we can see the ra is sakin and it is preceded by either a fatha or a dhamma. So therefore it is read with tafkhim. And if it is preceded by a kasra, it will be read with tarqiq. Example, Fir'aun al-maqabir. So these two ra's is sakin and it is preceded by a kasra. The sound should be empty. Note, this rule is applied whether stopping on the ra or continuing, as long as the ra remains sakin. So whether the end of a verse, the last word of a verse, or in between the word, as long as the ra is sakin, you will apply this rule. If during wasl, continuing, the ra gains a haraka, then the rules of ra mutaharrik will apply. Meaning, if you stop on the word, I can't think, alhaakumut takathur. So there you stopped the ra, you made it sakin, but they're saying if you are carrying on, you're making wasl, you are going to carry on the word at-takathur, then it gets a dhamma, alhaakumut takathuru. So whatever haraka comes on the ra when you are continuing, you will apply the rule of ra mutaharrik. So whether it will be a fatha or a dhamma, you will make it full. Whether it has a kasra, then you will read it with tarqiq. There are three exceptions to this rule. Now here is where it gets a bit tricky. There are three exceptions to the rule. Number one, if the kasra is temporary. Example, irji'i. So we all know in Surah Fajr, we read irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. So contrary to the rule that ra sakina will be pronounced with tarqiq if preceded by a kasra, the ra will be read with tafkhim. Why? Due to the temporary kasra. So I think I should mention that you're going to find kasras which come and go. They are going to be temporary, they are going to be permanent. Now obviously to know what hamza is permanent and temporary, a person has to have some knowledge about the Arabic language. But fortunately, when we learn the Quran, we already learn how to read these words without even knowing the rules. So basically we know how to read. I'm assuming we all know how to read these words and and these in all these examples. But we're learning basically why we are reading like that. So one does not now have to go learn the Arabic language just to figure out. Just if someone wants to know, it will be good. But there would be some kasras which come and go. And I should take this time to mention also that you find two types of hamzas. We learned what a hamza is, basically the the sounds, hamza. And you find types of hamzas. You find a permanent hamza and you find a temporary hamza as well. Now, in this particular example, irji'i, If we look, there is a Hamza. But now the author is saying the kasra in this example is temporary. Now a temporary kasra cannot exist on a permanent Hamza. That means this Hamza also has to be temporary. So the kasra is temporary, this Hamza is also temporary. So therefore, how do we know this? Because when we starting from this verse or from this word, when we saying irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah, we are starting on that Hamza. Yes. But let's just go to the verse or the word before this. We say Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna turji'i. When we made wasl, we joined. How did we join? We totally removed the Hamza. We never say أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي. If we had to read like that, that would imply that the Hamza is permanent. But this Hamza is temporary. And the kasra on it also is temporary. So it will fall away when you are joining. So this is what the author is trying to explain. That when you are joining it, we never learn Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutmainnatu irji'i. We just learned ayyatuha nafsul mutmainnatu turji'i. So we remove the Hamza completely. So this is why the Ra, it will stay in its natural form, and that will be tafkhim, full mouth, because there isn't something strong enough to make it tarqiq, meaning the kasra is not strong enough to make it empty mouth. So we'll keep it in its normal form, full mouth. Note, an easy way to check whether the kasra is temporary or not is to join it with what's before it, to what's before it. So like I've explained, if the kasra is not pronounced when joining, then it is temporary. If the kasra is read whether joining or starting from it, in all conditions, then it is permanent. So this is in a nutshell what the author is saying, and I hope by explaining the difference in the types of Hamzas and why the kasra is temporary, it clarified this particular Ra. And we said that Hamza is of two types. One is the temporary one and the permanent one. The permanent one, a way to indicate whether the Hamza is permanent, if you take a 15-line Quran, normally you would find that the Hamza which is permanent, it has an alif with the small Hamza on top. So that is a way to figure out whether the Hamza is permanent. And our 13 lines doesn't really have that, but the 15-line Qurans, they have that indication. Number two, the next exception to this rule is that if the Ra Saakinah is followed by a letter of isti'la in the same word, example, mirsad or mirsada, irsada, labil mirsad, firqa, and qirtas. These are the only examples of this in the Quran, contrary to the rule that Ra will be pronounced with tafkhim here. So we know that before the Ra, if the Ra is sakin and before it is a kasra, it must be read empty mouth. But in all these examples, there is a full mouth letter, a letter of isti'ala in the same word. Note, we add the condition in the same word to exclude words like fasbir sadran, anzir qawmaka, and wala tusa'ir khaddaka. So in all these, in which the Ra will be read with tarqiq, because the letter of isti'ala following it is in the next word.
وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ